Hello out there, and welcome back to What Remains of Edith Finch. I'm Eric with Perspective Gaming, and last time we left off, we were still just exploring the
After
house
Sam
and
died,
learning
my mom and Edie got really close. They'd both lost a lot.
more and more deaths in the family. We've gone through basically an entire generation of people, just a whole lot of kids that were in the same family. And we're working our way up the family tree of a family cursed to have a lot of early and tragic deaths. Lawsuit filed against you. You have 20 calendar days after the summons. Divorce contract.
Dear Kay, do you remember the way Gregory used to laugh when he thought he was alone? Like something funny was happening, but only he could see it.
Time's over, Gregory. It's time to... Hold on, sweetie.
I'll let y'all dwell on the pain that is about to happen. I think it's pretty explicitly obvious that a lot of pain is about to happen. Why? Ah! Do I not need to get all the letters? Do I just need to... Okay. Whee!
That Gregory?
I know you did everything you could. Maybe if I hadn't called that night.
Damn it.
I mean, debatable.
Good luck, Kay. Love, Sam.
I love that one mixes a lot of beauty with a lot of sadness. Like, they knew that that one was going to be, like, one of the most tragic, so they did, like, a very beautiful, surreal moment instead of kind of a dark or comedic one like they do with some of these others. Dawn's bed's all packed up and fine, because that's Mom.
I can't imagine my mom ever writing poetry, and yet...
A poem for Gus, who always said the wedding was a bad idea. Our father never hit us kids, at least not very hard, before the day my brother said with teenage disregard that he'd be dead before he'd see a wedding in our yard.
Let's go fly a kite up to the highest
My father
height.
made him come, of course, but Gus stood far apart, just flew his kite and bottled up the storm inside his heart. I tried to talk him out of it, but though he'd never met her, "We don't need a stepmom," were the words that I
now
remember.
pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride.
They hired someone who could really, I mean, I don't know about hired, it may just be one of the writers on the staff always, but they hired a ringer who could actually write poetry. Where are the words? Oh, I'm cutting people in half with the string. Ah, there they are.
When the time for photos came, Dad ordered him to come here. But Gus declined, and as a sign held up his middle finger.
Like, this is some poetry.
Wind picked up, and panicked geese appeared and quickly went. But all the humans did that day was go inside the tent.
What are you hinting me? You guiding me to look at the tent? Well, you're wrong. They're over here by the chairs. Liar.
The rain came down in buckets then, but no one seemed afraid that nature might destroy the tent our dad had crudely made.
Gather up all this stuff.
The thunder sounded much too close and full of angry power. But all my father said to this was, "Make the music louder."
Oh, that ended fine. I don't know what I was
I
worried
wish that I
about.
could truly say I thought about you on that day. Out there on the beach alone, just you, the wind, the sea, and foam. But I didn't. Until we found you.
Like, it's rhyming couplets that have a regular meter.
She never talked about him, but Mom told me once if I was a boy, they were going to name me Gus.
And then it ends breaking up the meter and the rhyme scheme to symbolize the suddenness of the death. I mean, it's like they really brought in someone who could poem. You know, I an odd thought.
My mom moved up to the loft after her brothers died.
Yeah, fair.
At the time, it was as far away as she could get.
Oof. Her dad was from this family of all deaths in horrible, tragic ways, and he went and joined the military to get away. Which, like, I get that it's like any way you could possibly get away, but also, like, that's a scary way to
Religion
go in
was
that
another thing my mom never
circumstance.
talked about, but I think it helped her a lot after her dad died. She spent a summer building houses in Calcutta, where she met my dad, Sanjay.
Whee! Whee! It's totally worth it. Yes, I have to climb back up the rock wall, but I mean, you gotta. I love this house, aside from the fact that we're like we're like 5 stories up on handmade housing. Like, The interior of the house, great. The construction of the house, horrifying.
My mom moved to India a week after graduation and got a job teaching English. Lewis was born a year later.
That's not too hard. Yeah, teaching English in a lot of foreign countries is a good way to... Like, if you want a job in teaching English, you will always find one
else to go.
in foreign countries, and they will often pay well, especially in, like, China. But you also have to, like, you know, be willing to leave.
Kids in the house again. The house had to get a little bigger, but Edie was used to that.
So yeah, it's just sort of a shape of the thing, is that the house keeps getting bigger because they seal off rooms instead of reusing them.
And for a while, things were good. Almost normal.
Teaching the family history, and we, Edith, were already interested in that. Little moment of reinforcing that we, Edith Jr., were always interested in in the stories in our family history. And it's like, here's another one. We never explicitly hear what happened to Sanjay. But right here, relief efforts end in disaster. Hundreds of relief volunteers are injured or dead after the effects of a second earthquake. So, like, not even is the whole story available. Like, the tragedy goes beyond just what we see in the stories.
The beginning of the end was Milton's 10th birthday, when Edie gave him a castle.
Another locked room. No
After
date
Milton
on it, though.
Disappeared, the only thing he left behind was a room full of paintings.
Yeah, 1992, year I was born. Oh, the yellow man got him. You hate to see when the yellow man gets somebody. That's weird.
Milton Finch in The Magic Paintbrush.
A hell of a flip book. God, the flip book of a flip book. And he takes a bow and was no more.
I was 4 when Milton disappeared.
So we don't know for sure what happened to Milton.
Mom spent months searching for my brother. Then she sealed the doors.
But apparently Mom assumes he died.
Whatever Milton had found in the house, Mom didn't want it getting out. Mom definitely blamed Edie, but I think Lewis blamed himself.
It's a beautifully
After
sad
he graduated,
game.
he just spent more and more time in his room. Until Mom got him a job at the cannery.
Get ready. Get ready. I feel a sudden pressure as if something is coming. Yes, this is a boat in the tree.
Lewis's room smelled very, very familiar. That part of him lived on. Lewis and I spent a lot of time playing games together, but he was surprisingly bad at them. He died a lot.
God, that's a macabre joke. The Red King's Dream. That sounds more like a Lovecraft story than a video game. Letter to Dawn Finch.
Dear Mrs. Finch, as Lewis's
Mom.
psychiatrist, I can understand your desire for an explanation. As I see it, the trouble began in January, shortly after we convinced your son to seek treatment for substance abuse. Newly sober, I believe Lewis first noticed the monotony of his daily life.
Oh, there we go.
He kept
So-
working at the cannery,
I am controlling this hand with the mouse.
but he withdrew part of himself. In our sessions, I saw the same behavior. His mind began to wander.
I'm controlling
I
this
asked him
part
to
with the
describe
key
it.
with the WASD.
He said he started small, imagining a labyrinth. He'd feel his way about. Then something moved. Bats. And toads. And things that have not names.
And here we
He
start
knew
to
it was all in
see
his head.
sort of a blurring of language from the world, the real world of what the psychiatrist would
He
say,
took it very
and
seriously.
something sort of more fantastical.
I had hoped he'd find himself.
And you start
But he
to
found something more.
find it easier and easier to look
I worried
at
about
the
him
game
then.
while just doing
Daydreaming
the
at the cannery.
hand.
I spoke with his boss. But he said Lewis had become a model employee. Methodical, tireless, focused. Like a whole new Lewis. So I let him go on. I even encouraged him.
Which is probably
It
not a
seemed
great
very
thing to
promising
do.
at first. He told me he'd made a new friend. On the edge of the
Game-
city, he named Lewis Topia.
Before you even notice, it starts to get bigger and bigger,
built the
taking up
city up
more of
slowly,
the space
brick
on the
by brick.
screen.
Then he made musicians. And songs for them to play. He talked about starting a band. And he was always humming something. Every day his imagination grew stronger. He no longer spoke at the cannery. But his chopping was as reliable as ever. Then one day it struck him. That all the cheering crowds, even the stones under his feet, were all in his imagination, so he could do whatever he wished.
Damn it.
He held an election for mayor. And he won.
Mario?
They begged him to stay, but his mind was already wandering. It became a game for him. He'd conquer a city, then immediately push on. New Louisville.
This is like a masterwork in Ludo narrative gameplay, where the gameplay
St. Louis.
is the story. Where the gameplay and the story work together in
He
perfect
started
harmony.
drifting away from our reality.
Or you play as Lewis in the imagination and in the cannery doing a menial job.
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis.
Until one day he forgot to go home from the cannery. Even as his mother pleaded with him, part of Lewis kept sailing on. In Louisburg, he heard rumors of a
Gabba be gay.
beautiful prince.
That's the rule of like every playthrough I've ever seen of this game. Is that you gabba be gay.
The prince was on his own quest for radiant rainbows.
Ow. These rainbows are poorly placed.
He followed the sound of his
Just keep leaning left for
Electric
some
sitar.
reason.
His chase led him to a golden palace east of the sun and west of the moon. Even then, his logic remained sound.
And now the whole world is just this except for the fish.
He knew the world was all in his imagination. But he was so proud of having created it. In his own eyes, he'd become something greater than a king. For someone who'd never known success in the real world, I think it was overwhelming. And then it struck him that the real Lewis was not the one chopping salmon, but the one climbing the steps of a golden palace.
Bad therapist. I mean, I'm sure it's not a perfect science, but this feels like a pretty substantial
My imagination
failure.
is as real as my body, he told me. It was hard to argue with him.
Here we are back in reality. In Lewis's locker, we have the Chinese place they always ordered from and his weed
Began
posters.
to forget the world we know. I think it pained him to remember Lewis, the cannery worker. He began to despise the man with a royal contempt.
chop, throw, grab, chop, throw, grab, chop, throw. Goodbye, Lewis.
I still thought I could save him. Even after he said he was being crowned king over all the lands of wonder. The palace would be packed with his companions.
Now it's just gone. It's just this.
Including the wise Calico who had insisted on advising him.
Family cat even became part of his mindscape. Hi, Molly.
His prince waited, holding his crown. There was only one thing left to do.
Turn a corner, nothing horrible could be waiting for me, and oh no!
Bend down his head. And the rest I think you know. Mrs. Finch, your son was a kind man who will be missed by all of us who knew him.
God,
My
what a
brother was
tragedy.
really cool. I wish you could have met him.
All that pressure. Losing a brother, raised with a parent who was obsessed with
On the way
death.
back from Lewis's funeral, my mom told me to start packing. She waited until the day before we left to tell Edie.
With a great-grandmother who was obsessed
I'm
with
not
death.
sure if she wanted to make it easier or harder.
I mean, how could you not crumble under that kind of pressure?
I wish we'd stayed. But I understand why we left.
It's hard to say
My mom
anything.
ended up leaving everything behind.
It's just so sad. To teach and to learn 7 ways to create a fulfilling classroom. Woman after my own heart. Again, all these constant reminders. Sanjay passed and his stuff was still in her bedroom. They are literally
What happened that night
surrounded
had been
by
coming for a
it.
long time. Maybe it should have come sooner. But it had to end one way or another. All that's left now is to tell you about that last night.
Too many horror games when the first thing I
That
thought
whole
was that
last
getting
day,
jammed into her wrist
Edie
like
just
Resident
watched his
Evil
pack
7.
and didn't say a word. Until supper, when she raised her glass and said,
To our final night together, and all our final nights apart.
Grandma, you know what I said about alcohol. Some of your medications are very
Edith,
specific.
I left a present for you in the hallway. Why don't you go open it? The grown-ups have to argue now.
I'm
What a
sorry,
great
you're right.
grandma.
We're all leaving tomorrow. Let's just enjoy our last...
I'm not leaving.
Edith, you're excused.
The power had been shut off that morning, but Edie always had plenty of candles. When my mom sealed the library, I don't think she knew about the other entrance, or that Edie had a key to it.
Grandma Edie always said every Finch is buried in the library.
That thing you're afraid of isn't going to end when you leave the house. Edith has a right to know these stories.
My children are dead because of your stories. I think it's best if Edith and I leave tonight. We'll have the nursing home send a van for you in the morning. Okay?
Dear Edith, there's so many stories I wish I could tell you, but there's only time for one. This is about what happened on the night you were born. That night, the tide went way, way out. It was the first and last time I ever saw the old house aground. There'd been an earthquake out in the middle of the ocean. They
Side note.
called it the lowest tide in 1,000 years. God, it smelled awful.
This
No.
side.
I've seen that house every day of my life.
Side note. This does happen if there's an earthquake out to sea, and it's a sign a tidal wave is
I
coming.
never thought
Don't
I'd
go
back
out.
to it. When the fog rolled in, I lost my way. I got turned around. I started seeing things. Things I'd forgotten had ever existed. But when I saw them, they felt like old friends. That night, a lot of things came back to me. Or maybe I came back to them. Things I can't explain, but that I need you to try and...
Edith, what are you doing in here?
It's mine!
Edith!
Mom, you're gonna rip it! Let go! I kicked and screamed, but Mom dragged me to the car. I never saw Great-Grandma Edie again. The next morning, the van came to pick her up, but she was already gone.
She knew. She knew what
After
she was
that, we
doing.
moved around a lot. We both tried to make the best of it. A few years went by. My mom didn't like to talk about it, but she started getting sick a lot. The rest happened pretty quickly. She got better for a while, and then she didn't. And then I was alone. The last Finch left alive. until I found out about you. I'm still not sure what to tell you about all this. If we lived forever, maybe we'd have time to understand things. But as it is, I think the best we can do is try to open our eyes. And appreciate how strange and brief all of this is.
Thesis statement.
This journal was supposed to be
about
for
it.
you.
Don't think about it.
But now I hope you'll never see it.
Try not to think about it.
I just want to meet you. And tell you all these stories myself.
Don't think about it.
But I guess if you're reading this now, things didn't work out that way. This is where your story begins. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it. It's a lot to ask, but I don't want you to be sad that I'm gone. I want you to be amazed that any of us ever had a chance to be here at all. Good luck.
And we return to where we started, because the frame didn't start with Edith, it started with someone else who read the first story that contained all the others. I didn't notice until this time that our son had the same... He had a cast that was on the same arm as Edith always wore, like her knit glove. So sort of a familial connection between the two of them. So a lot to process, a lot to work through. I love this game. It's absolutely incredible. It does such a good job of telling a story through its game mechanics and through its words and through the details of the world. It's really a whole package of a story. And it's the most beautiful bummer I've ever seen. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Yeah, expect a theory. I keep doing that. An essay on this at some point. It won't be immediate. I got dropped a sudden extra class I have to teach this semester, which is good because I get paid for that, but unfortunate because I don't get the extra month I was planning to work on things like essays and better editing quality. But, you know, that's life. Be sure to share any thoughts, feelings, etc. in the comments, because there's obviously a million little different details and there's stuff I'm not going to notice or think about. And that's the power of collective theorizing, of all working together on understanding a story, because stories are complex and there's a lot going on and we need each other to sort of bounce ideas off of and hold each other accountable to good thoughts. So I'm going to continue to let this play. If you enjoyed this, feel free to leave a like, leave a comment, or look in the description for a link to my Ko-fi page that I've finally set up. So if you feel like donating, you can. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and have a good one. Bye.